How's it going, everyone? This video is going to be over building an entry model. I will first talk about the concepts used within an entry model, and then a few confluences, as well as how a reversal forms and which entry model is correct for you. So let's get into the video. The first thing we need to cover before we get into the concepts is the kill zones. So if I'm looking to trade intraday, which is what I include to be below the hourly chart, I'm going to want to focus on the kill zones or taking trades within these time windows. Now, I personally focus on the New York AM session for indices, so I'm going to focus on 8:30 to 11 for my trading. However, if I was a London trader, I would generally want to be looking between 2 to 5 a.m., and all times are in Eastern Standard Time. Now, when choosing a time frame, it generally works out as impatient people want to be on a lower time frame, while patient people are generally better suited for a higher time frame. I personally find myself right in between those two, and I focus on executing on a 5-minute time frame, as not only does that align with the daily profile very well, but I also just find it to be the correct time frame for me. Now, this is something you have to figure out for yourself, and we will talk about time frame alignment in a future video. Now we are going to get into the concepts. Now, don't focus on understanding and mastering every single concept. That is a mistake that I see many people make. Instead, focus on one of these concepts and master that. And if you have followed me long enough, you know that my focus is on order blocks. So getting into our first concepts here, we have a fair value gap. Now, most of these I have an individual video on, so if you are confused, I would check out those videos, and I will link those in the top right corner as we go through this. Now, with a fair value gap, it is a 3-candlestick pattern in which the high of the third candle does not overlap the low of the first candle, or where the low of the third candle does not overlap the high of the first candle. Now, this is a point of interest by drawing out the high and the low that do not overlap to look for price to react off of. Now, the next concept we are going to cover is an inversion, and that is when a fair value gap gets closed over and then is used as support to trade higher or resistance to trade lower. The next concept is an order block. This is what I focus on personally. This is when we have price reach into a point of interest. I take the series of up close candles into that point of interest. When it is then closed below, I'm expecting this high to remain and this to be a point of interest to trade lower. So you can see over here, when we trade into an important level, the series, in this case a single candle, is then closed over, and that level is used as support to trade higher. The next concept is a breaker block. This is very similar to an order block, but it is where we have a high, a low, a higher high, and a lower low. I'm then marking out the down close candles in between that high and that low to use as resistance to trade lower. Similarly, for the bullish breaker block, we have a low, high, low, higher high. I'm going to use the up close candles from that low to the high as the point of interest for price to trade higher. Now, the next concept is OTE, and this is when I'm taking an impulse leg or a displacement leg and marking out from the high to the low with a Fibonacci, and using the Fibonacci retracements and specifically the 0.705 area, looking for a lower high to form and then trade back lower to the low or following the trend. Now that we have gotten through the main concepts, I want you to focus on which one stood out to you the most and either write that down or remember it in your head and just be focusing on that. Now, as we get into additional or confluences, this will be things that can be paired with our previous concepts. So you can see here, when we use premium and discount or a 0.5 fib of a range, I can then look for either a fair value gap or an order block or whatever PD array that I chose in that area. So you can see here we have a fair value gap in a discount to look for a low to form. And then here we have an order block in a premium to look for a high to form. Now, another additional confluence, and this would be my personal favorite as a confluence, is SMT, or with correlated assets having a difference in structure. So you can see marking out this low here and this low here. One asset made a higher low while the other one made a lower low. This can indicate or be used as a confluence of a reversal. Now let's talk about an order of a reversal forming. So now if you go ahead and remember which PD array you chose from the concepts or focused on, watch that in here. As we go throughout this list, the confirmation of the reversal forming will become greater and greater. However, you are getting in later to the move. Now, I personally prefer to trade continuations, so later into the move. However, you will see when each concept forms. So I want you to remember what you wrote down or what concept you are focused on and find it in here when we go. Now, each reversal, it won't always include this, but this is generally how reversals form, is we first have a purge of a low or a turtle soup. Now, we will not have this if we have SMT, right? Now, the next thing that forms will be an inversion, right? So the move down, that purge the low. Once we close over the fair value gap, if there is one in this leg down that created it, that will be the second thing to form. Now, the next thing to form will be the change in the state of delivery or an order block formation once we close through this series of down closed candles that purge that low. Now, after that, this is where 4 and 5 kind of blend together, but generally we will have either a fair value gap here or a breaker block. Now, those will be the last things to form in the reversal. So almost every reversal starts with either a purge of a low or an SMT. We then have an inversion, a change in the state of delivery, and then once we close through or over this high, we'll have either a breaker block or a fair value gap. And what I said about confirmation is the further down this list, the more confirmation there is that it has formed a reversal. So if we go back to the very beginning, you can see we still have this trend down. We swept out this low. There's not very much confirmation that this reversal has formed yet, versus as we get to, a breaker block, there is quite a bit of confirmation as we get the move down, the inversion, the change in the state of delivery, and this displacement up, that this reversal has formed, right? So you sacrifice more confirmation for entering higher into the move. So let's hop into TradingView now to go over some examples. So here we are with our first example, and in this we are just going to focus on the order of the reversal or how a reversal forms. With a little context, you can see we have failed to displace out of either side of this range, and we are consolidating. So understanding how consolidations work, and I'm looking for a manipulation, I can mark out the high and the low of this consolidation range. As we let this continue, you can see we have taken out this low. So if we are anticipating price to manipulate this side of the range and then trade to this high, I can anticipate this to be a turtle soup, or that would be step 1 in the reversal. You can see there's not much confirmation here yet. Now that step 2 would be what? Looking for an inversion. So let's see when we get a close over the fair value gap that made that leg down. As we let this continue, you can see here we get this close through, right? So this is the inversion, and that would be that entry. You can see this has more confirmation than the turtle soup or just entering below the lows. Now, what is our next confirmation or the order of the reversal would be a change in the state of delivery or an order block formation. When we close through this series of down closed candles, in this case, it is a singular candle that made the low. So as we take a look, there we get the close through that. So then this would be another entry here. And you can see as we continue into this sequence, it gets more and more confirmation that we have formed a low. However, we would be entering further and further away from this low. Now, if you look right here, have we formed 4 and 5 or a fair value gap or a breaker block? We have. You can see here, we have formed a fair value gap. And taking a look for a breaker, do we have a low, high, low, higher high? So we do. So then marking out these series of up close candles from this low to this high before the lower low and higher high right here, that would be our breaker block. So I can mark that out there, clean up my chart a little bit, and let's see how this works out. So as we go, we get a retracement back into this fair value gap. Do we get a continuation higher? We find some support, consolidation there, and then we expand higher through this other side of the range. So reviewing this one more time, the order of a reversal, we have that turtle soup or a purge of a low. This wouldn't have to occur if we have SMT. The next is a inversion, right? Or a close through the fair value gap that made this low. The next is a change in the state of delivery or the order block formation or the series of down closed candles that made the low gets closed over. And then we have a fair value gap, which would be this 3 candle pattern right here. And then we have a breaker block, which is a low, high, lower low, higher high. Now, if you remember earlier in this video, I said to pay attention to one of these. And the reason for that is If you are trying to focus on every single one of these every single time, you're likely to get overwhelmed. For example, what is easier to see? Is it easier to understand price action when everything is shown here? Or is it easier to understand if I get rid of almost all of these and just focus on an inversion? Or get rid of almost all of these and just focus on a change in the state of delivery? Is when you simplify things down, it becomes more and more clear. So taking what you wrote down as your favorite PD array or the one that makes sense to you, go ahead and remove all the other drawings except for that one, right? And focus on that for forming reversals. Now let's hop into a few examples of actually going top down using this method. So here we are with our next example. And if you remember this from Twitter, I talked about it, but we have manipulated the low in this consolidation range. We've closed back inside the previous bar, and we have continued to expand higher here. So looking left, where is price likely to go? Is it more likely to reach for this low or more likely to reach for this high? And in my eyes, it is more likely to reach to this high. So continuing this bullish bias into this next day, let's go down to the lower time frames. So here we are down on the lower time frames, and if we take a look at the daily profile, what do we see? Well, we see Asia form a high with a bunch of failure swings, and then we decline into London, which just has a consolidation. So if we are bullish on the day, we can anticipate London highs or these equal highs up here to get taken out. And then if we are in a manipulation, we want to see what? We want to see either a manipulation of a low or an SMT to form and confirm this reversal to trade higher. So as we let this play out, and here we get a purge of that low. So if we are anticipating this to trade higher to Asia highs, this would be the turtle soup entry. Now there isn't much confirmation here, so if I let one more candle form, what do we have? Now we have a fair value gap that has formed here that can be used as an inversion. So that would be step 2. Does that form in step 2? Yes, we now have an inversion, but what else have we had form here? We also have step 3, or the change in the state of delivery, and we also have the breaker block formation right here. So marking all of those out, we can see if we form a fair value gap here, which we do. So now you can see all of these basically overlapping or acting as a confluence together to trade higher from this area here. So like I said before, it makes more sense to focus on one. So what I would be focusing on here is just the change in the state of delivery and then the main threshold of this order block. So as we let this continue, you can see we get a reaction out of this area and we start to trade higher. Now, where do we want to see price trade to? Our Asia highs or continue higher within our daily profile. So just to review one more time, we have a bullish bias, we have a daily profile. This is then when we can use our order of a reversal to look for our turtle soup, inversion, change in the state of delivery, breaker block, and fair value gap. But like I said, I think it is important to focus on one or two of these and not all of them. So for instance, I focus on the change in the state of delivery as that is how I trade. But there are other people that only focus on inversions, that only focus on breaker blocks. Really the most important thing here is you have to find what catches your eye and what works for you. So here we are with another example. If we take a look at our daily chart here, we have swept out this high, we have closed back in that high or into the range, and then we have a continuation lower. So I could be looking for this low to get taken out, as well as looking to fill some of these fair value gaps here on the left side. So down here on the hourly chart, you can see we have all these equal lows resting right here. So let's drop down to the 15-minute chart. So here we are going into the day, and I want to see if this low gets taken out. You can see we don't take it out yet. We get a consolidation or a retracement higher. So if I'm still anticipating this low to get taken out and we have expansion, and I'm viewing this as a retracement or a consolidation right here, I either want to see a close below, these up close candles here to validate this high, or for this high to get swept out. So looking to see which one of those happens first, what do we get? We have more of a consolidation here. So then I stop considering this. I'm zooming in and I see us reaching for this high. And you can see we still never close below there, but I wouldn't be interested in it as it is a consolidation. And now we have swept out this high. So if I'm viewing this as a consolidation, reaching into London, we sweep out this high. and I'm expecting a reversal to form here to trade lower, I would anticipate this to be a turtle soup or step 1 in a reversal. Where would be step 2? An inversion forming here. So let's see if that occurs. Here we get the inversion, so then that would be an entry or step 2. Now step 3 would be looking for this change in the state of delivery or the order block formation. Right here we do get that order block formation or the change in the state of delivery. And then right after, what do we get? We get a breaker block formation and a fair value gap. So you can see we get our fair value gap right here, marking that out, and then marking out our breaker block is from our low to our high. This one isn't very clear, so generally on this, I would just use this whole leg up. So marking that out, you can see how those overlap. Then I would anticipate price to continue to these lows after this reversal has formed. So we reach back up into that fair value gap, into that breaker, body still respecting the change in the state of delivery. And how I would view this is we get a new propulsion block right here, but as we go to trade lower, we go and we take out that low there. So just to review one more time, we get our turtle soup or the sweep of a high. Then we get our inversion or a close through the fair value gap that made this high. Then we get our change in the state of delivery or the order block formation. Then we get our breaker block and our fair value gap. And then we get a continuation as the reversal has then confirmed. And I'm a huge fan of this propulsion block right there within my strategy. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you do have any questions or concerns, or if you need a video on something, please leave a comment below and I will read through those. But with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.